They excluded me from their weddings. Now they're mad. I didn't include them in mine. Am I the jerk for not asking any of my kin to come to my wedding? Here's my story. I'm a 24-year-old woman, and I'm planning to get hitched soon. I got a bunch of older kin. There's my 33-year-old sister, Mandy, my 35-year-old brother, Joe, and my twin brothers, Kyle and Kurt, who are 31 years old. They're all hitched already. When they got married, I was still a teenager, and they all decided to have weddings where kids couldn't come. So I didn't get to go to any of their weddings. Let's start from the beginning. Mandy was the first to get married, and she decided she didn't want any kids at her wedding after she made that choice. Joe, Kyle, and Kurt did the same thing. When Joe got married, I was only 10 years old. I guess I can see why they might not want a 10-year-old at their wedding. But I was still really bummed about it. I really liked the gal he married, and it hurt that I couldn't be there to see it. Then when Kyle and Kurt got married, I was 12. Again, I understand why they might not want a 12-year-old there, but I've always been a good kid. And besides, they're my brothers. Mandy's wedding was when I was 15. At first, she didn't want to have a no-kids rule, but everyone else in the family convinced her it was a good idea. They said it's nice to go to a wedding without kids making a mess of things, so she set the age limit at 16. I asked her if she could make an exception for me since I was almost 16, but she said no very sternly. She told me if she made an exception for me, she'd have to make exceptions for other kids too, and that wouldn't be fair. I got really upset and yelled that it wasn't fair. I couldn't go to any of my siblings' weddings. My folks didn't like how I reacted and they grounded me. By the time Kurt got married, I was 17. I knew it was going to be another wedding without kids, and I didn't even bother getting upset this time. I just sent a simple congratulations message. My folks were mad at me for not making more of an effort to celebrate with them, but I just stayed in my room with my fiancé, Jake. Now that it's my turn to get married, I've decided not to invite any of my kin. I felt left out of their big days. So now I want them to know how that feels. When they realized they hadn't received invitations to my wedding, they all came over to ask why. I told them plainly, "You didn't want me at your wedding, so I don't want you at mine." I explained how hurt I was not to witness any of their weddings and said they should understand that feeling. They tried to justify their decisions by saying their wedding served alcohol and they didn't want young kids around. I told them that I just wanted to be part of the wedding ceremony itself. The after party wasn't important to me, but then my mom started yelling about how unfair I was being and how she dreamed of having all her children together on such a special day. The irony of her statement didn't escape me, but I stood my ground. I was determined not to invite them feeling justified in my decision. Before I share an update on the situation, let me tell you about the general consensus from the top comments I got. Folks overwhelmingly agreed that I wasn't in the wrong. They found it harsh and unnecessary that my siblings chose to exclude me from their weddings. The excuse they used about alcohol not being suitable for children at such events was seen as just that, an excuse. It's not hard to prevent kids from accessing alcohol at family gatherings. Some pointed out that while it's fine to have an adult-only wedding due to various reasons, like the potential for young guests to cause disruptions or the additional costs involved, excluding a close family member is unheard of. I wasn't just any kid. I was their sister. Being left out of such significant family milestones felt not only inappropriate, but deeply hurtful. It highlighted a strange and unwelcoming distance between me and my siblings, making it hard to feel close to them or my mom. People suggested that I should firmly communicate my decision to my mom, and then end the conversation if she kept trying to change my mind. If my mom truly wanted her kids to celebrate together, she had numerous chances to ensure I was included in my siblings' weddings, but chose not to take them, by not standing up for me. Then she missed her chance to create those unified family memories she now desires. One commenter cleverly noted that my mom's current attempts to guilt me into changing my wedding plans were like a missed opportunity for her to discipline my siblings when they excluded me. Similar to how I was grounded for expressing my disappointment, they suggested that in a way, I was now grounding my mom by not involving her in certain pre-wedding activities like dress shopping or bridal showers as a form of fair comparison. Furthermore, the logic behind the alcohol excuse was questioned if avoiding alcohol exposure was the real concern. Why did the age limit conveniently increase just enough to keep me excluded? At 15, I was below the 6-year cutoff, and at 17, I was still deemed too young for alcohol, despite the legal drinking age being 18 here. This inconsistency highlighted a deliberate choice to keep me out rather than any genuine concern for my well-being around alcohol. I was advised to remind my mom that if she wants a gathering that includes all her kids, she should organize and pay for it herself. Her failure to support me when I was excluded from past family events, coupled with punishing me for being upset about it, was seen as a significant parental misstep. It was clear that I deserved better treatment and that my siblings needed to be held accountable for their exclusionary behavior by missing out on my wedding. Lastly, amidst all this family drama, I got words of congratulations and encouragement. Despite the challenges, the support from others reaffirmed my decision and reminded me that I was doing what felt right for me on my wedding day. I was not at all in the wrong here. If you're considering inviting your whole family, it's crucial to remember that your folks haven't done anything right in this situation. However, if your mom or any other family member keeps complaining or yelling about your wedding decisions, you might want to rethink their invitations to the wedding as well. It's deeply regrettable that you've had to experience such behavior from your siblings and parents. If I were in your shoes and my family caused trouble over my wedding choices without ever apologizing for their past actions, I'd consider reducing contact with them to a minimum if they kept causing problems. I might even stop talking to them altogether. Congratulations on your upcoming wedding. I hope your marriage is filled with happiness and that you thoroughly enjoy your ceremony and celebration. Now for the update. The day after I shared my story, I had a conversation with my family. I told them the only condition under which I would invite them to the wedding was if they explained their actions in full detail. Otherwise, they wouldn't get an invitation. There was a moment of awkward silence and some confused looks before they finally shared the truth with me. It turns out I'm actually the cousin of my siblings, and I was raised by my uncle, who is my father's brother. After my own father passed away, my family doesn't know who my mother is because I was young and needed a lot of care. I wasn't seen as a sibling by them, which led them to distance themselves from me. My brothers admitted to sometimes feeling resentful towards me. My parents expressed shame for not having told me this sooner. The whole situation left my cousin feeling uncomfortable, and I decided to leave. In the end, my fiancé Jake and I chose to elope. We realized that the traditional wedding wasn't what either of us truly wanted. What mattered most was being with those closest to us. So we celebrated in a small, intimate ceremony with just a few friends. We decided to save the money we would have spent on a big wedding for a trip to our dream country. My parents were upset that we didn't have a big celebration, but honestly, I don't mind. The day was about us and what we wanted. I was taken aback by the reaction some people had to our decision, with some messages criticizing us for being too immature to marry. But learning that I am technically their cousin doesn't excuse my family's behavior. They didn't want me at their weddings, but insisted on being at mine, which is incredibly unfair. And my parents, who have now shown themselves to be even more problematic, failed to inform me of my real relationship with my siblings. My mother's repeated outbursts about wanting all our children together on my wedding day highlight the selfishness and inconsistency in their attitudes. It seems they were more interested in a free party than in respecting my feelings and choices going forward. I'm considering significantly reducing my contact with them. Furthermore, the revelation about my real father, or rather my uncle, and the fact that this part of my family history was kept from me for so long has erased many precious memories and left me with a tainted view of my past. It's heartbreaking that I now have to put in extra effort to learn about my family's history, a task made more difficult by my parents' decision to turn it into a shameful secret instead of sharing it openly and lovingly. It's really tough to hear about the situation I'm in. It seems like my mom wanted all her children to be together for my wedding, yet she didn't make any effort to include me in my siblings' weddings. And then there's the shocking revelation that I'm actually a cousin, not a direct sibling, which nobody had bothered to tell me about before. This doesn't justify the way I've been treated, though. Choosing to celebrate my wedding with my close friends and the family members who actually care about me seems like the best response to the way my family, especially my parents, have acted over the years. It's not explicitly mentioned, but you can sense that I might not have felt as loved or valued as my siblings. It seems like my parents might have believed that raising me was a kind act of charity, implying that I should be grateful and that I owe them something. However, the truth is that I don't owe them anything more than any of my siblings do. While my parents may have tried to treat all the children equally, it's clear there was a difference in how they felt on an emotional level. The mental gymnastics my parents must have gone through to justify not telling me the truth about my family situation is astounding. They probably thought keeping me in the dark would prevent things from getting weird, but instead, it led to a situation where I felt alienated and despised by my siblings. The whole scenario is just absurd. Now, moving on to another tricky family situation. Am I wrong for refusing to pay the taxes on my parents' fully paid off home while my brother, who is 43 and fully employed, lives there with his kids? My parents are both retired and collecting their Social Security and pensions. My brother Mark occupies 3 of the 4 bedrooms in their house, 1 for himself and 2 for his kids. He pays $1,200 a month in rent to my parents, even though the going rate for a three-bedroom house in their area is at least $2,300. After my parents paid off their house, they started asking my sister and me to help with the property taxes. They've told me that I would inherit 25% ownership of the house, with Mark getting 50%, and my sister Jenny the remaining 25% after they pass away. Clearly, there are no favorites in this family, right? When I questioned how much they needed so I could cover my share of the taxes. My mother announced that she and my dad wanted to retire fully and would like me, Mark and Jenny, to take over the tax payments. I wondered why the rent Mark pays isn't considered sufficient. He's never moved out and has been depending on my parents for his entire life. My mom defended him, saying he helps out by running errands, then suggested I should reduce the child support payments to my ex-wife Linda, with whom I have 2 sons. So let me get this straight. They're suggesting I should give less to my own children, so Mark and his kids can live more comfortably. Or perhaps they think I should withdraw money from my retirement account, facing penalties just to continue supporting Mark's lifestyle. I just can't keep supporting my brother the way my parents have all these years. I've got my own family and bills to worry about. Let's look at what some other folks think about the situation. One person pointed out that it doesn't make sense for someone who doesn't live in the house nor owns it to be responsible for paying the property taxes. Those taxes should be the responsibility of my parents who own the house. If they're struggling to afford the taxes, there are options like downsizing, which is common for parents whose children have grown up and moved out. Another option could be for Mark, who lives in the house, to contribute more towards the costs. This person suspects that soon they'll be asked to help with repairs and maintenance too, with the promise of inheritance being used to entice them to pay. They firmly believe I'm not in the wrong here. Another person shared that they and their sister had suggested their parents downsize years ago to make retirement easier. However, their parents refused because they were too focused on providing for Mark and his children. Now that the house is paid off, it's shocking to them that their parents are asking for money, especially when Mark should be contributing more. Given the amount of space he's using, despite working fewer hours by choice, my brother pays much less than he should while I work full-time despite a disability, ensuring my own children are well cared for. My love for my mom is strong, but her inability to set proper boundaries and her habit of enabling my brother is problematic. She seems okay with me providing less for my children to support my brother and his kids, which is unacceptable. Another person remarked that they wouldn't want to be involved in paying the taxes either. They suggested being ready to lose out on the inheritance because it's not fair to be responsible for these taxes. They couldn't understand why they should pay taxes on a house that's already paid off, especially since they wouldn't want to deal with the IRS over issues caused by a brother who can't manage his own responsibilities. They've even told their parents to remove them from the will because they don't want any part of this situation. Lastly, someone from the UK was confused about the property taxes and asked for clarification. They learned that in places like California, even after you pay off your mortgage, you still owe property taxes calculated as a percentage of your home's assessed value. This means if your home is valued at $500,000, around $6,250 in property taxes annually. Property tax rates can vary significantly from one state to another. Switching to a different story. Am I wrong for giving a bounty hunter information on my brother's whereabouts after he falsely used my address for his bail bonds paperwork and then skipped his court date? My brother, who's 35, has been in and out of jail his whole life. Recently, he got arrested again and managed to post bail. One evening while I was eating dinner, there was a knock at my door. Opening it, I found a man in a bulletproof vest holding a piece of paper, looking confused. He asked if my brother was here right now. I had to tell him that my brother is indeed my brother, but doesn't live at my address. After telling the man at my door about my brother's missed court appearance and the bondsman being out a significant amount of money, I provided an address where my brother often hangs out. It turns out they found him there and now he's back in jail without the possibility of bail. No bond company is willing to take a risk on him anymore, and none of our family or friends can afford the bail. I certainly won't be offering any help after everything that's happened, so it looks like he'll remain in jail until trial. My decision to give out his location has caused quite a stir in my family. My mom, sister, and grandma have all been messaging me nonstop, calling me awful for what I did to my brother. I'm beginning to feel a bit guilty, but I also know I couldn't just sit back and potentially face legal consequences myself because of his lies. It's clear that all the trouble my brother is facing now is due to his own actions. My family seems to think he could just avoid the law indefinitely, or that involving me in his problems without my consent was acceptable. They've always treated him like he can do no wrong, never disciplining him as a child. Now they're upset with me because they can't protect him from the consequences of his actions, which they've always done in the past. The situation has always been skewed in his favor, with our family refusing to acknowledge any of his faults. It's a pattern that's been in place since we were kids, and now that they can't intervene, they're looking for someone to blame. I'm at a loss as to why he's always been the favored one, even when his actions clearly warrant discipline. Dealing with a brother who's caused nothing but stress, financial strain, and emotional turmoil over the years is exhausting. But it's crucial for him to finally take responsibility for his actions, especially when those actions are illegal, and he continues to make those choices. It's time for him to face the consequences without our parents constantly bailing him out. I took a step similar to someone else who had a troubled brother after years of dealing with his issues. They saw their brother go to prison, which eventually led him to clean up his act. This gives me hope that maybe, just maybe, my brother will finally learn from this experience. My mom has spent an incredible amount of money on my brother's legal troubles over the years. Now that she can no longer help him, the blame has somehow been shifted to me. Our mom has always shielded him from the consequences of his actions. But now that she's unable to, it's apparently my fault. It's as if this situation was a necessary intervention for our mom to stop enabling him, which has only caused more problems for her finances, her mental health, and her relationship with me. So there it is. I guess you could say my family's a real mess. My brother Mark is back in jail where he belongs, and my mom is mad at me for doing the right thing. My sister Jenny is too caught up in her own life to care much, and my dad just goes along with whatever mom says. As for my ex-wife, Linda, she's been a nightmare, always finding ways to make my life harder. She didn't like the idea of me cutting back on child support to help out my brother, but when she found out what my mom suggested, she had a field day with it, calling me every name under the sun. I decided to keep my distance from my family for a while. It's just too much drama, and I've got my own family to think about. My kids need me, and I need to make sure they're taken care of. Maybe one day things will change, and my family will see things from my perspective. But for now, I'm focusing on my own happiness and well-being. After all, you can't choose your family, but you can choose how much you let them affect your life.